Now that we're recording, welcome to Breaking Free. 5 steps to breaking free from the pain of infidelity and reclaiming your joy. Couple announcements before we get started. One, there is a workbook that was in your email. You do not need it to be on the call tonight. Just a notebook and a pen or pencil will do. Will do you fine. Okay. The second announcement was as soon as the recording comes back to me, which is probably tomorrow morning, I will send an email out to you, and I want you to make time to watch that email. If you're on the call live, I want you to tell me in the chat or in the Q&A what you desire most out of this training. And then the second thing I want you to do is set an intention for what you're going to get out of this training. Because when we set an intention, we just show up differently. Okay? All right. So here we go. Before we get started, like I said, tell me in the chat what you're hoping to get and then set the intention that you are just going to get a really powerful shift tonight. I want you to decide right now that you are going to take it all in, because when you come into a training like this with that kind of intention, it will happen because you will create it. You will listen differently when you know you're about to receive something that's really powerful. It's the power of the mind, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. We're going to go fast. We're going to cover a lot, so I want you to take note. I want you to show up. I want you to be present, and I want you to be ready, because I bring my whole heart to these teachings, and I want you to do the same. This might be free, and I think my trainings and my master classes will always be free, but I am going to give you so much valuable information today that you can take some of these steps and go start applying them tonight when this call is over. So I'm really excited about what I'm going to be sharing, because what I call it the light at the end of a really dark tunnel. And I'm excited for the tool that I'm going to teach you, because they will change your life. How do I know they'll change your life? Because they changed my life. And so I just want you to show up with your whole heart too. Like I said, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A, or you can put them in the chat. I'll try to keep up with the chat, you guys, but I have ADHD and squirrel thing. Steps to add to my daily habits in June to help me relieve the pain. Love that, Linda. Thanks for sharing. Okay. So being here live is very important for us because you usually get more out of it. But if you're watching on the replay, listen, I'm sometimes a replay girl too. And so when I am a replay girl, I just decide that the replay for me is going to be as powerful as if I was showing up live. Okay? I decide I'm going to get what I came for. But I do want to encourage you, if you are live, to go back and rewatch the replay, because you're going to glean some things from the training that you will have missed the first time. There's going to be so much, it's almost like information overload, that you're going to pick up on things the second time around. So let's get started. Okay. Number one reason you showed up here tonight. If you haven't put that in the chat, put it in the chat. What are you hoping to get? What are you hoping to learn? So I've been doing this work, this healing, being on this journey of breaking free from the pain for years. Probably, I'm going to say close to 10 years now. And by the way, if I haven't introduced myself yet, I'm Monica. I'm trained as a life and health coach, and I too endured infidelity in my own marriage for over 10 years before I found a way to love myself again and to break free from the pain. And now I spend my days coaching women. I help them heal their heartbreaks and their nervous systems. I'm the host of a podcast called From Heartbreak to Heal. I'm the founder of Joybound, which is a group coaching program for women. It's a monthly program where we journey with women to create self-love and joy after infidelity. I also help people with their health with Young Living. I love helping women to become the hero of their life and story. But before all of that, I was a mom to 3 beautiful babies, and I wanted nothing more than to be a mom and to have a family. And family is still more important to me than anything else next to my faith. But there was a time when the pain of his infidelity kept me from showing up as the mom that I dreamed of. And until I took my healing into my own hands and decided I wanted to break free from the pain, I was never going to show up as the mom that I wanted to be. And I want to share with you today that, first of all, I firmly believe that you are amazing just the way you are. You are worthy and beautiful and precious, and you are capable of breaking free too. So I want you to keep that in mind as I'm sharing this with you tonight. My goal for you tonight is that you will leave here different. You have a different outlook, a different perspective. But first, we have to talk about, and for many of you, this is something you have never done publicly. You're here because I'm guessing you've joined the secret club too, the club that you never actually wanted an invite to. I joined that secret club back in 2005 when I was pregnant with our third child. And the entire time, I only ever told 3 friends. And most of the time, I told someone because I needed help with something and I needed to explain my situation. So I mostly carried the weight of that invite all on my own. There was nobody hosting trainings that I knew of about relearning or maybe learning for the first time how to love myself. There was no one telling me how to get out of the pain or that finding joy was even possible again. I so wish that there was a magic 3-step process that I could give you and give it to you today. Be like, here's a 3-step process. You do these 3 things, you've got to apply them, and boom, you're healed. I wish it was that simple. Yes, I'm going to give you 5 steps. I called them steps, but part of them are really 5 ways of becoming a new version of yourself. So there are things that you can start to do today that will help you heal, help you love yourself again, and ultimately break free from the pain. The question we're going to answer today, or tonight, I should say, is how do I keep the betrayal from changing me into a person who is afraid and worried and untrusting? That's the question we're going to answer tonight. So here's what often happens. We learn about our partner's betrayal and we decide that the emotions that we feel from that betrayal are too much. So we disconnect from ourselves. We disconnect from our emotions. We decide it's not safe to feel those emotions. We live in this constant state of sadness and unworthiness. And we get to the point where we just think that's the way it's always going to be. And we also get to a point where it's just easier to be sad because we have conditioned our brain to be in that state. I spent a lot of years allowing my infidelity to change me, to harden my heart, to make me numb, to keep me closed off from others, until I woke up one day and I realized that I was letting the betrayal win, and I didn't want to let it win anymore. And that's when I decided to become the hero of my infidelity journey. And I want that for you too. And I know so many of you are right there also, but you haven't realized the betrayal is winning. Too soon will. So I want to share a funny story with you. Actually, I was texting with that friend just 2 minutes before our call, and she was saying, I'm so proud of you. You're doing amazing work with women. I hope your training goes really well tonight. So this is someone I've known for years. Our girls were Girl Scouts together. I've known my girls are 19 and 20. I've known her since my girls were 4 and 5. And, but we were never great friends. And over the years, we've become closer and our friendship has become closer. And she told me a few years ago, she said, it was really hard to like you all those years ago. She said, it just seemed like you had a pole stuck up your. And then she said, but you're not that girl anymore. And now I understand why you were the way you were. And it was the first, I knew I had changed. I knew I was different. Other people had said it. But it was the first time I realized how closed off I had been, how standoffish I had been. I was so afraid to let anybody into my world because of the secret I was keeping. And if I let them in, they would find out my secret. And at the time, that seemed the worst thing in the world that could happen to me is somebody would find out the secret that I've been carrying. I don't see it that way anymore. But tonight, I'm going to share with you what I did to finally break free from the constant pain and reclaim so much joy in my life. You guys, if you could feel the joy I feel on a daily basis, you would be like, sign me up for whatever it is she's doing. Because to learn, to feel and create joy again, to trust and fall in love again, to create a life that I am so freaking in love with, without this looming shadow of sadness that comes when our partner betrays us, that's what's possible for you too. In 2014, I asked my husband to move out, and I made my first appointment with a therapist, and she asked me a question that would change everything in my healing journey. She asked me, "What do you do that is selfishly just for you?" And I couldn't answer the question. I couldn't think of one single answer of something that wasn't done for somebody else, that wasn't done for my kids, that wasn't done for the house, that wasn't done for my job, for my career. I couldn't think of anything. And for you, that might sound familiar too. Or you could list all the ways you're trying to save the marriage, how you're clinging to your husband. Doesn't matter what the answer is. That one simple question led me on a path to learning how to love myself, how to feel worthy of love again, how to believe I was worth more than lies and deceit. And that is the first step. That is your first assignment when you are healing from infidelity, because here's the thing. The love of no one is guaranteed except the love that you can give yourself and the love that Jesus Christ can give you. And sometimes we think that we're owed the love of somebody else. And when we can learn to love ourselves, we no longer need someone else to love us. We can want them to love us, but we don't need them to love us in order to feel whole, to feel complete, to create joy. So let me ask you this. What's something you do that's just for yourself? How well do you love yourself? Because what happened was when I learned to love myself like no one else could, for me, this is not true for everyone, but for me, I realized that the love he had to offer me was no longer enough. And that's when I knew the answer to whether or not I stay in the marriage or I leave. It took me 10 years to get there because I didn't have all of this to help me get there. So, number one, first way to break free and reclaim joy is to learn to love yourself radically. And it starts by doing something that is just for you, the benefit of you, for the joy of you. And then from that one small action, you will discover new ways to love yourself. You'll learn to love your body through food and movement. You'll learn to love on your emotions that have been hard and heavy. You'll learn to love on your nervous system that's been through a shock. You'll learn to love yourself mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally. No one can love you as well as you love yourself. And we often forget that and we don't practice that. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. So what was the thing I did when she asked me that? I mean, she said to me, "Don't come back until you can answer this question." I was like, "Oh, okay." What did I do? I went out and I bought a treadmill. I bought a pair of running shoes and I downloaded the Couch to 5K app and I became a runner. But there's a story behind that. It was more than just me becoming a runner because you see, several years ago, I had picked up running. In the throes of our broken marriage, I'd had 3 babies in 3 years. The weight had started to pile on and I needed to do something for myself, so I picked up running. Well, I picked it up until my husband told me that I looked funny when I ran. So I shelved running and right then and there decided that was not going to be the thing for me. Running was not going to be my thing. So getting a treadmill, buying a pair of running shoes, downloading the Couch to 5K app, all of that represented so much more than just doing something for myself. It was a symbol of learning to stand up for myself. It was a symbol of not allowing somebody else's thoughts about me to determine my own thoughts about myself. It was a symbol of seeing that I was worthy. And when you learn to love yourself, that's what. So running became my thing, and it helped me get through my divorce. It was my saving grace. There's something called the stress cycle. And in order to complete a stress cycle, you have to do something. And doing something physical is one of the things you can do to complete a stress cycle. Part of how we have to help heal our nervous system. And so that running, it became the thing. It helped me to complete my stress cycle. It created friendships. I started running with a group of women in the mornings. It was a way to work through emotions, but mostly It was the first time that I was willing to love myself just the way I was, without the words of someone else in my ear. There is nothing about you that needs to change. There's nothing you need to do or be differently to get your husband to be faithful. You don't need to change your hairstyle or wear your makeup differently, or get bigger boobs, or God forbid, lose weight. True love isn't conditional. And what is missing in your life right now is true love of yourself. The only thing that needs to change right now is the way you see yourself. I promise you, this is the most loving thing you can do for yourself, is to remind yourself that you are worthy of your desires and your dreams, that you are worthy of an honest and faithful relationship, and you are worthy of being on your own if that so happens to be your journey. And it's not everyone. So the ruminating thoughts, the hyper focus on what he did, the worry about if he'll do it again, the wondering if he's hiding something, all of that's going to take some work. It's going to take some discipline to train your mind to see you for who God made you to be. But this is the work I was willing to do. And if you are willing to be curious and courageous, you can create a version of you that you love. I don't know if I've told you this yet, but I'm so proud of you for being here tonight. I hope that you are feeling so much compassion for yourself right now. So I want you to love yourself well. Meet yourself where you are with grace and compassion. Listen, I am so grateful that for that fighter that was in me who didn't get taken down during all those years of infidelity. I'm a fighter. I'm a survivor. And who I was then served me so well. Here I am, still standing. So we have to meet ourselves where we are, and we have to meet ourselves without the shame, without the guilt, without the hatred. We have to meet ourselves with compassion. Of course we blame ourselves for his action. Human nature. Of course we stop loving ourselves. It only makes sense. If he stops loving me, I would too. I'm so grateful for that version of her who was doing what it takes to carry the load. She was fiercely protective of her family. She carried that weight of the infidelity all on her own. But she was worth so much more, and so are you. That's who I want to show up as. I spent so much of my life not showing up like that. Unworthiness tends to swoop in, and it pretends that it's the only way after we experience a betrayal. But I want to promise you, it's not. And it's not just stealing your joy, it's stealing your days and your health. It's stealing the best version of you from you and the people in your life that matter most to you. I often think about, what do I want my legacy to be? What do I want my children to say about me when I'm gone? Do I want them to say, yeah, she was so closed off, she was afraid to be herself, she kept herself small so everyone else would feel good about themselves, she had such low self-esteem? Or do I want them to say, my mom was so brave. She spent years being treated as if she didn't matter, and yet she didn't listen. My mom was willing to love herself so well that she went on to teach other women how to love themselves. My mom taught me how to be self-confident, how to see myself the way God sees me. She was so full of joy and love. Now listen, what I'm not saying is that all of this is easy. I think my message on Instagram and on social media can sometimes get misconstrued. There is immense pain in infidelity. There are moments of fear and worry and doubt, and learning to find your value outside of the marriage isn't easy work. But when I began to redecide how I wanted to experience my life, when I asked, what do I want to make it mean that I had 10 years of infidelity in my marriage? What do I want to make it mean that there were multiple affairs? What do I want to make it mean? And what do you want to make it mean? Here's what I decided. I wanted it to mean I could create joy in spite of the pain. Actually, because of the pain. And I got better at creating joy. I want to share a quick story with you. This is from a Christmas letter I sent in 2015. My husband and I, my first husband and I, we separated in March of 2015. And it says, as I reflect back on 2015, I can't help but think about a night when the kids and I were all seated at the table having dinner, something we do often. Our family dinners usually include a question of the night. That night, the question was about Solomon and how he asked God for the gift of wisdom. And then the question asked each of us what gift we would ask for. As we went around the table, I asked for courage, something I felt I needed then as a new single mom. My youngest asked for happiness. I decided that would be a better wish. There had been so much sadness in our home. Out of nowhere, my son, who never speaks, says, "But without sadness, you won't know what happiness feels like." It was in that moment I knew my children and I would be okay, that we would feel happiness like we had never known before because we had known what pain felt like. Those people sitting around that table, they were my why. My why to radically love myself again, my why to heal and create massive amounts of joy again. So often when we experience infidelity, we start showing up from our false self. Remember that girl who had the pole up her, as my friend likes to say? She was living from her false self, and she had no idea how to get out of it. She had no idea she was even in such a thing as a false self. But I've since learned, and I want to teach this to you. So I have how much I want to share with you that I'm trying to keep this class to under 3 hours. My kids mean the world to me, and I want them, my granddaughter, to be a strong, confident, joyful mom, grandma. Yes, yes, and yes, you do. Okay, so this is really, really, really important because who you believe you are becomes who you are. And often in our case, we believe we are who we are. Who we believe our partner thinks we are becomes who we think we are or believe we are. And I'm hoping to give you some epiphany tonight because some of you are not believing who you really are, and we're going to change that. So I have this chart up here. And on this chart, it's your false self and your authentic self. So the fear side is the false self. The love side is the authentic self. This is in the workbook. So like I said, it's in the workbook if you can. If you're like, I can't read this, that's okay. It's in the workbook. It's all there. But I want you to see here. So whether or not you want to take the words from the scriptures, some people call it old man, new man, or sometimes it's called the ego. Sometimes it's called the natural man. But let's talk about our false self first. I like to call this the fear because I think there are two primary emotions. There's love and there's fear. And everything stems from those two emotions. And when we are showing up from our false self, from our ego, we are showing up in fear. So let's take a look at this list here. This is the version of ourselves that is not our highest self. It's not who we're created to be. And it's often for us a reflection of the perception of who we think our husbands think we are. Look at our word. So we're going to talk in a minute all about the qualities of who God actually created you to be. Like, what are the attributes? Who are you really created to be? And our false identity is not that. So we're going to talk about the qualities that you exhibit when you're mostly living in your false identity. And I'm going to read some of these off to you, but like I said, they're also in your workbook. So we have protective, hurried, rigid, intolerant, anxious, stressed, offended, defensive, hides insecurity, weak, self-conscious, living from a place of lack, resentment, indifferent. All of these are what we would call false self traits. And I want you to think about it. I want you to think about these. Just think to yourself for a minute. How many of these traits do I exhibit on a regular basis? And maybe some of them you're like, I'm not even really sure what it would look like to exhibit that. And that's okay. I want to give you a basic overview of this understanding of your authentic self. because this is our step number 2 of our step number 1 was love yourself. Step number 2 is to find your authentic self, because she gets lost when we experience infidelity. Okay? So what we want to do is we're going to talk about the authentic self, and we're going to talk about how to recognize when we are there versus our false self, and what to do, how to get ourselves back to who we actually are created to be. So we have the false self trait, also known as the ego, the natural man, like I said, protective, defensive. So if you find yourself getting defensive a lot, getting offended, that comes from the false self. So the ones that I speak, and if you have some of these that you're like, oh, that totally resonates with me, put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. Tell me what you think. Or if you have your workbook out, write down I'm going to read these one more time, and I want you to write down the ones that you're like, yep, that would be me. So protective, hurried, rigid, intolerant, anxious, stressed, offended, defensive, hides insecurity, weak, self-conscious, lack, resentment, and indifferent. That indifferent, that's a common one. We just get to a place where we just stop caring. Like, I'm just going to stop caring. Linda says stressed, self-conscious, lack, and indifferent. Amy says hurry, a feeling of restlessness and defensive too. Yes, 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 yes to all of those. I mean, I lived in all of those for so long. And I think for me, the hurry was like hurry up and get to the next stage of my kids' ages, or the next stage of our life, because then maybe things would get better. And then you're just like, you feel like you're on the hamster wheel that you just can't get off of. Okay. All right. Listen, you guys, let me tell you something. The ego self is weak. So I'm going to talk about the ego self again. I'll come back to it. But so what we're going to talk about after this is the reason that you don't want to operate in your ego self, because it's the weaker version of you. It's not the strong, vibrant version of you. So these attributes make us weaker, and we want to recognize when we're operating in these, because they do make us weaker. Okay. This is why the ego has to be protected. This is why we get defensive, because it's a weak stance. So we have to protect it, right? Lacking the awareness, self-conscious, all of those. Okay. Now, how many of you, just tell me yes, how many of you struggle with this? How many of you struggle with being self-conscious? You worry about what people will think. Oh, if they find out he cheated, what will they think? Maybe they'll think I wasn't a good wife. If I tell my family we're getting divorced, will they be disappointed in me? We're operating from this place of lack, and that's where the self-consciousness comes from as well. Like, there's not going to be enough. There's not going to be enough money. We can't afford to get divorced. I'll be financially ruined. Or the lack shows up in the way of like, I'll never be able to trust again. Yes, that's a big question for me. What if they find out and it is my story? And is it my story to share? Right. And you have to decide what's right for you. There's no one size fits all on sharing your story. And you have to decide where you can share your story that feels safe for you. Because one of the things we have to do on this journey is we have to create internal safety. So another place lack shows up is there's not enough love. There's no good men left in the world. You feel like everything you have is just lacking. Like, because if it wasn't, like, he wouldn't have cheated, you feel like the world is lacking. You feel like yourself is lacking, because then he wouldn't have cheated. And so you just operate from this sense of lack. Or you find yourself jealous of others and your perception of their life and their marriage, because remember, social media only posts the best parts of everybody's life, not always the real parts. And so then we know you're for sure not operating in your authentic self. And that's not what God created for. That is not his identity in you. That is operating from the ego or from the flesh. And then another one that pops up is resentment. All the people who feel resentment towards your husbands, put a 1 in the chat. You guys, listen, this one is no joke. Resentment and bitterness, They will take hold of you if you let it. And so many of us, we feel secretly resentful. We resent God for the state of our lives. We're like, why is this my life? Why did you choose this for me? We resent our husbands for putting us in this pain. We resent her for being a willing partner. Listen, I resented my mom for a long time because she named me after Saint Monica. Saint Monica is the patron saint of wayward husbands. And I'm like, how could she do this to me? I see now it was all divinely planned. This was my calling, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I had to experience that in order to be here. But there was a season where I was mad at my mom because I thought she did this to me. I mean, come on. That was the ego really trying to uh, keep me weak. So we look at these other women who look like everything is good for them, and we ask ourselves, like, why can't this be me? Why isn't this me? What have I done? Then we have this bitterness. We have the resentfulness about what happened to us. And then we have our lack that shows up, right? And then sometimes we even get to the point of hatred. We can sometimes let that hatred fester. And then it becomes this way of life. And like I said, like what I said earlier, sometimes staying stuck in the pain becomes the easier path. There's a saying that says, we will choose the familiar hell over the unfamiliar heaven every day. And sometimes that's what happens to us. And it just becomes the way we operate. And listen, I know because I was there for a long time. And here's what I can tell you. No wonder he didn't like me, because I didn't like myself either by the time I decided to get out of the false self, decided to love myself, decided to embrace my authentic self. I didn't like who I was either. So if you are operating in indifference or apathy, like the just don't care attitude, then that is also your ego, your false self, trying to keep you from feeling the big emotion. That's the thing we have to remember. Oftentimes our false self, it's just trying to keep us safe. And that's okay. But we want to be like, no, we're big girls and we can feel these emotions. We can feel this pain because we know in feeling the pain, we then get to feel the joy. Okay, so let's chat about the joy. We are wired for joy. So I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking like, so basically I need to become a whole new person. Yeah, actually, we all do. All humans do. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to be very kind to ourselves, because I can think of a lot of these over here that I still exhibit. And I've been doing this work for a long time. This is living from a place of fear. And I said it before. I sometimes I say, I know what hell feels like. And I bet you do too. And so if today I can get you out of this hell a little bit faster, then all of this will have been worth it. So C.S. Lewis has this famous quote that when we get to heaven or hell, we will realize that we were already living there. So how you live right now, your life on earth, you're either bringing heaven down, or you're bringing God's kingdom, or you are bringing hell on earth. And here's the thing. You're either bringing heaven down or you're bringing hell on earth. But here's the thing. You are the one that experiences it the most. So you are bringing hell. You are putting yourself in hell. You're not putting everybody else. You're putting you there. So why not bring down heaven for you? So this is your authentic self. This is where you acknowledge your doubt. This is where you have resilience. Oh, you can't get cancer. There we go. This is where you don't get battered around and offended at every little thing because you are so resilient. It's where you understand that most people are operating in the false self, including your husband or partner. He was operating from his false self, and his ego is weak, and he has no idea how to find his authentic self. And when you understand that, when you can truly believe that, you start to see, oh, this actually has nothing to do with me. This is a him problem. So when we are in our authentic selves, we have patience with ourselves and we have patience for other people. In the false self, we often get angry at ourselves because we aren't farther along on our healing. But in our authentic self, we know that the healing takes time and we give ourselves so much patience. We have a strong sense of self-awareness instead of self-consciousness, a really, really strong self-awareness. Aware of whether or not we're operating in the false self or the authentic self. We operate from a place of abundance, not lack. We believe and see that there's plenty of everything to go around. There's plenty of love. There's plenty of forgiveness. There's plenty of money. There's plenty of resources. There's plenty of good compliments. And it's this attitude and this life of abundance. Your authentic self is generous. Your false self is always finding a way to take, but your authentic self always finding a way to give. And sometimes it starts just by giving to yourself. Your authentic self lives in forgiveness of self, and then of others. And this is an amazing quality because forgiveness doesn't condone the behavior. It sets you free from the pain of it. I could teach a whole training on forgiveness, and maybe someday I will because I love talking about that topic. I have worked so hard at that and read so many books on that. But like I said, we're trying to not make this 3 hours tonight. Your authentic self lives in love. Your authentic self, she looks around and she sees everything with compassion. She is protective of herself and others. She's protective of others because she knows how the rest of the world lives. And she knows that when she's showing up as her authentic self, that God is there to protect her. And that she is living in alignment with God's word. So you don't have to protect yourself as much. It opens you up. You get to become less guarded and closed off, I think is what I'm trying to say. And you can stop self-serving and start serving others. You stop living in misery and sadness, and you just start living. So how do you know if you're operating in your authentic self or your false self? Well, do you feel alive? Because when you feel really alive, chances are you're living from your authentic self. Your authentic self makes you feel strong. Your false self makes you feel heavy and weak. Your authentic self is heaven on earth. It's God's kingdom. So the question is, where do you spend most of your time? Which list are you living from? So I want you to think about that. You can put it in the chat if you want. You can take some notes. You can just keep it all to yourself, whatever you choose. But I want you to think about maybe what are the 2 most common traits of your false self, and then what are the 2 most common traits of your true self, your authentic self. And just put those in the chat for me if you'd like. And we'll come back to those in a minute. So if it's self-conscious, so one of the things that you can do in your workbook, so for example, let's say you take and you write down the qualities of the false self that you spend the most time in, like what list do you live from? You can answer that in your workbook. And then you can tell me like or you can put in your workbook your most common traits. So let's say it's lacking, judgment, resentful, hatred, indifference, whatever it is. And then I want you to be like, look at the list. Like really, this is where the self-awareness comes in. You have to look at the list and be like, yeah, that's me. And ask yourself, where is my false self coming out most of the time? So then you ask yourself like, okay, if it's resentment, where does that come out? Where am I resentful? Is it towards my husband, towards my kids, is it towards my marriage? Is it towards my church? Like, is it towards my faith? And you write down all of the ways that resentment shows up for you. And then you move on to this one. And here's the thing, you guys. This list is harder for us to write. Why is it harder for us to tell the good parts of us than it is? I don't want to say the good and the bad. That's not true. The false and the authentic. Why is it easier to say, oh, these traits versus, oh, these godly traits, But this is going to be the harder work because then I want you to move to that list. And in your workbook, I want you to write down a few traits that you commonly show and then where they show up in your life. So, for example, if it's patient, where does that patience show up? Is it with parenting your kids? I was a teacher. For me, patience was one of my authentic self virtues, as you could say, and it showed up in my classroom. I was a very patient teacher. And so this is where you just start to become self-aware. There's no judgment. There is zero judgment on what you write down. Okay? Okay. Now, let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is challenge negative thought. So let me stop and read the chat for a minute because we're moving on. Let's see. False self is hurry and defensive. Authentic is open and serving others. I love that. My husband told me that it wasn't going to be hard because I am resilient. It is hard to add that one. It is like he said it was okay because I could handle it. Yeah. And I can relate to that a lot. I had some similar things, which we have to remember that's his false self trying to protect him and convince himself that it's going to be easy for you because he needs it to be easy for you to heal. And I think one of those is, like, in an instance like that is where you have to be willing to have the really hard conversation with him. Like, I might be resilient, but this is hard and I need you to acknowledge that this is hard. Like, it's not just okay. All right. Number 3, challenge negative thoughts. Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Here's what I want you to see. Every day, 1,000,000 times a day, you get to create what you want in your life. And I'm not talking about taking away the betrayal or magically fixing the marriage, but you get to create the emotions that you want in your life. So I'm going to show you, this is the main tool of my program. And it's called the creation model. I hope I'm doing this. It's getting dark out, so I hope you can see this. But what I want to talk about is this idea of challenging negative thoughts, because when we get in that pain, when we're on this journey of infidelity and we're invited into that exclusive, private, secret club that we don't want to be a part of, the thoughts about ourselves, thoughts about our lives, the thoughts about our husbands, about our futures can become very negative. And so I teach this tool called the creation model, and it's based in something called cognitive behavioral theory. And it's this idea that our thoughts become our emotions. Our emotions cause us to take actions, and our action create results in our life. Okay? So one of the things is, if you want to show up from your authentic self, you have to have thought of belief that you are capable of showing up as your authentic self. And I don't have time to completely dive all the way into this today. I just wanted to kind of show this to you, give you, you can go Google cognitive behavioral theory and probably learn some more, but I wanted to give you a brief introduction into it and just mention that this is something that if you're like, oh, I think this could be really helpful for me. This is one of the things inside of my program. We go in way more detail. I have multiple teaching videos talking about this kind of thing. So, but this is the tool that has changed my life forever. And so you get to decide what are the thoughts and beliefs that you want to focus on. And the other thing this helps us to do is it helps us to change the way we tell our story. I almost put that as one of the steps. I debated putting that one, but it's this idea of the way you tell your story matters. Because there are a lot of injustices in infidelity. And if you tell your story from a place of injustice, from a place of a victim, then what you think that you're going to get emotions that you don't want, negative emotion. And then when you take action from negative emotion, you don't create the joy-filled life that you're hoping for. You don't create the reconciled marriage that you want. You don't create the awesome life after divorce that you long for. And so this is so powerful in helping you to know how to tell your story and helping you decide how you want to show up. So remember, it's thoughts create feeling. Everybody say it together. Thoughts create feelings. So one of the things you can do with the creation model is you can use it to interrupt a thought that you're having. So if you realize you're having this, particular thought about your husband that you're like, this is not serving me and my marriage well, then you can use this to interrupt that. Inside my program, I teach about how you can have deliberate thoughts and default thoughts. Your default thoughts are the thoughts that are just coming, and you can learn to train your brain to have a deliberate thought that you focus on. Then it's going to give you the emotions that you want in your life, which will then get you to take the action that you want to be taking, and then ultimately create the results that you want. All right, I also put this quote up here from Aristotle, which says, "You are what you repeatedly do." Excellent then, or your true identity, authentic self, is not an act, but a habit. So how do we live more into the identity that we want? We practice the habits. We practice those things which make up our true identity. So, okay, that was number 3, challenge negative thoughts. So we're going to love ourselves really well. We're going to find our authentic self. We're going to challenge negative thoughts. I also call it mastering your emotions. And then what's next? Number 4. What about all of the pain? Because I know it's still there. So what do we do with it? Well, we have to learn to process it. So step number 4 is process emotion. How do we do that? If it feels like you're carrying around a heavy backpack of anger, resentment, pain, fear, that probably means you are resisting your emotions to some degree. In the coaching world, we call it holding space. How can you make space for yourself to have the big emotion? Like I said, we wouldn't know what it's like to feel intense joy if we didn't know what it was like to feel sorrow. And as we learn to embrace the emotions more and more, what we realize is that the more we're willing to feel the negative emotions, the more amazing the positive emotions feel to us. So, can you just welcome the pain in? Can you say yes to this beautiful contrast of life with its disappointment, with its heartbreaks, but also with its joys, with its sadness, also with its laughters? Can you open yourself up to all of it so that you get a bigger, richer experience of your life? And the final step, I don't want to say my favorite because there is no favorite. You have to do all of these. But I think it's the thing that most sets my soul on fire. And number 5 is reconnect with joy. Inside of my program, I teach a concept called joy moment. And it's easy to lose belief that joy is possible after infidelity. The pain just seems like it's just easier to stay in the pain sometimes. But part of the breaking free is finding your joy. I want to share another quick story with you. I just had a birthday last weekend, and we went out to eat. And it was a weird one because I have a daughter who shares the birthday with me. And for the first time in 20 years, she wasn't here on her birthday. She's in Switzerland visiting my sister. So I got to pick the restaurant. I got to pick she doesn't like chocolate. So I got to pick the dessert, like all these things. Usually I just let her pick. But as we were leaving the restaurant, I had the biggest smile on my face. And I'm sure my family just thought, oh, mom's happy because she got her favorite gluten-free dessert and she just got to open all her presents. But that wasn't it. I mean, yeah, that was great. But what it really was I had, as I was walking out of the restaurant, I had this thought that no one can steal my joy. And if I have learned nothing from my years of experiencing infidelity that could be more powerful to me than this, it's that no one can steal my joy. Listen, it's been almost 20 years. My daughter is about to turn 19, And it was when I was pregnant with her that he had his first affair. It's been almost 20 years. 20 years it took me to realize that nobody can steal my joy. Not his actions, not his behaviors, not his words. They can bring me pain and they can knock me down, but I know how to get back up and I know how to create joy. And when you learn to do that, when you realize that no one can steal your joy because it's an inside job and you get to carry it inside of you, the world in front of you changes. I want to share a secret with you. I think the best kept secret of infidelity is that it calls forth more of you. It calls forth more of who you are called to be, calls forth more of your courage, more of your love, more of your joy, more of your hope. It also calls forth more of your pain, more of your resilience, more of your stamina. When I was thinking about creating this program, what I realized was what I really want to do is walk with women on a hero's journey. I want to show them how to become the hero of their story. And there is a concept called the hero's journey, and every writer, every movie writer, book writer, they know this concept, and it's a particular journey that a hero takes. And once you learn this, movies become very predictable for you because you're like, yeah, okay, there's the obstacle in the hero's journey. Oh, there's the antagonist in the hero's journey. And you can boil every great story, The Lion King, all of these great movies, you can boil them down to this one basic layout, this one basic path. And I think that healing from infidelity is that same basic path. We're presented with a call. In the hero's journey, it's called a call to adventure. We can call it adventure, but I don't know that that's the right word. But when we experience infidelity, we're called to something bigger than ourselves. But in that path, we're going to hit obstacles. And so I have created this program based on a hero's journey. And so this is you with your call to adventure, where there's obstacles and challenges, there's a death and a rebirth, and then there's a transformation. And that's what I love to do. I love to show women that this is possible, that you can believe, you can begin, you can belong, and you can become. I call it the hero's journey. And that is exactly what I do. I walk women through their own hero's journey. Are you ready for your journey? I want to help you to get on, because ultimately, what I really want is I want to see women walk out of it. And I don't want to see them stay stuck in it. My ultimate dream is that I show women that this doesn't have to break us, that this doesn't have to take us down, that in fact, infidelity creates a better version of ourselves. I hope this blessed you. I hope this gave you something to at least think about, maybe something to put into practice, something you want to really learn more about. I'm grateful for you for being here. I'm proud of you for being here. Are you ready to start your hero's journey? If you are, I would love to help you do that. For as little as $1.50 a day, you can have access to my teachings and my coaching. And I would love to work with you. If you are interested in learning more, let's set up a call where we can see what's the best fit for you, time-wise, financially. There are lots of different price points of things available to you to help you get on your hero's journey. Thanks for watching.